Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So may I ask you to please tell us your name and share a little bit about you so we can get to know you a little bit better? Anything you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. My name is Ashley Spivey. I grew up in North Carolina in a town called Elizabeth City. Went to undergraduate at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Then after that, I left North Carolina, one of the few people in my family to do that. Spent some time down in Atlanta, went to grad school in Baltimore, spent a good amount of time in Washington, D.C., and then moved out to California in 2018. And I've been here ever since.
Excellent. So why are you one of the few to leave North Carolina?
I don't know. I guess it's a comfortable place to be. It's a good place. There's a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunity. I think the cost of living is good, and then to be surrounded by family is a good thing. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of see what else was out there.
You think you ever come back to North Carolina to live?
To live, I'm not sure. Not anytime soon. I don't think. I don't really see that happening unless I think it would have to be. I wouldn't plan it, but if the situation kind of required it, I think I would. Like all of my family is there, so I definitely love to come back and visit.
Yeah.
My sister and my brother-in-law are there, and they have 3 sons, so it's definitely a place that still feels like home. But I don't think I'm ready to live there just yet.
Some more of the world to see, I guess, more places to
Hmm.
go and see. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so you North Carolina, Washington D.C., Atlanta. Why those? North Carolina is obvious, but why Washington D.C. and Atlanta? What were the reasons why you moved there?
Honestly, Atlanta, that was a place after undergrad, and I was working for a big global company that basically lets you choose where you wanted to live.
Hmm.
And when I was looking at places to live after undergrad, I was looking for a city with a lot of young people,
Hmm.
a city that was very diverse, and a city that had a lot of job opportunities. But I also didn't want to be overwhelmed.
Hmm.
Like I wanted a nice big city, but I don't know if I was quite yet ready for something like New York.
Hmm.
And I wanted something that I could afford.
Hmm.
And I wanted something where there was going to be a lot of young professional Black um, recent college undergrads. So Atlanta just pretty much checked all of those boxes. I think when I was looking at places after school, I was looking at Atlanta, Charlotte, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. And Atlanta just kind of checked all those boxes with still being, an affordable place to live by yourself. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
And then you left Atlanta and went to New Washington, or the other way around?
I went to Baltimore for grad school, and then after that, I went to Washington, D.C. And D.C. was, another place for me for opportunity. I went to grad school for healthcare administration
Mhm.
with a concentration in public health analysis and policy. So
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. was just a natural place for me to kind of launch my career after that. And I had a lot of friends that were there at the time.
Mhm.
And then Washington, D.C. for me was attractive because it was close to North Carolina, either by train, plane, automobile. It was pretty easy to get home whenever I needed to. So,
Absolutely. Well, that
mhm.
sounds wonderful. And then what made you go to California? What was there?
Honestly, it was not in the plan. It was never a place that I intended to live.
Mhm.
Um, I was at work one day, and at the time I was in the consulting field, and I always knew that I wanted to kind of go in-house and work for a company.
Mhm.
um, I just got called by a recruiter one day, and the company and the job and everything just was too good to pass up. So I kind of said, you know what, I'll give it a try and see how it goes, and if it doesn't work out, I can always come back home. And I've been out here for almost 3 years now.
And do you like it?
It's, I like parts of it. I will say from a career standpoint, it's definitely the best job that I've had.
Mhm.
I've definitely had the most opportunities, the most amount of growth. The company's really invested in me. So like from that standpoint, it's been great. I'm in Orange County, which is very, very different than any of the other places that I've lived. So it's, I'm still kind of getting used to it. There are definitely certain things that I like. I like the beach. I go to the beach, almost all the time, especially on the weekends. I'm, taking surfing lessons. I'm going out in the mornings before work. That's great. The people here leave a lot to be desired. Like I said, it's very, very different from my experiences in DC. And I think there's a couple of things to go with that. I think it's just very different out here, but I also think it's, just the point in life that I'm at might be the same no matter where I was. I just feel like I'm at this point where it's not as social as it once was, in terms of, young people going out doing things together. We're just in a different phase of our life. But I'll say that the people and the culture out here it's taken a while for me to kind of get used to it, a bit longer than I thought. So there are definitely things that I like, but there are things that I can see why this will never feel like home for me.
Yeah. And what is your career? What do you do? What's your daily job? What is it that you do?
I work for a medical device company, specifically one that produces devices for the structural heart, so heart valves and things of that nature. And specifically, I do what we call global health economics and reimbursement, or market access strategy. So I make sure that the devices that we're making, we're generating the type of evidence and implementing the strategies necessary so that health insurance companies, primarily Medicare, will cover and pay for these devices, and thereby allow people to, have access to these life-saving procedures. So I do a lot of, right now it's like a lot of strategic planning, things like that, a lot of cross-functional, like working with different areas of the company to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do now in order to be successful in the future.
Yeah. And I want to go back to something you said 2 or 3 times in the beginning, but do you find yourself one of many, or one among many, or just one?
I would say one among a very few, both. And it goes back to kind of, on the one hand, it's the function that I perform is it's a very niche function. So even back when I was in Washington, D.C., I was one of the few African Americans that like had a place kind of like in this field. And then like at my company out in Orange County, so I'm in Orange County, California, which is very, I guess they tell me it's diverse, and I think that it's diverse. There's a lot of diversity out here. There's just not a lot of Black people here.
Yeah.
So there's everything else. There's just not a lot of us. And then like at the company as well, I'm one of the few, but we are getting better. We have what's called the African Heritage Forum, which is, an affinity group that, really works with other groups throughout the company and things of that nature, and, working with diversity recruitment and trying to bring in more. But I think we're in a tough situation because, again, like I said, you have to get to the point of there being few in the field and then being few in Orange County. So we're kind of trying to climb multiple hurdles here versus, some companies that are located in places like Chicago and New Jersey, where there's just, I'd say, a more diverse pool to recruit from. Mm-hmm. And the living situations just offer more opportunities that I think are more attractive to a more diverse group. Whereas Orange County is still, it's an interesting place.
Yeah. I've heard you say 3 or 4 times, you talked about Black people and socializing and things like that. So moving to Orange County obviously didn't meet that goal for you, but it did provide you an economic space and allow you to have some of that. So are you planning to stay in that field, and are you able to translate lack of diversity and make that so it's important and valuable to you?
So like I said, this has by far been, and I'm still young and early in my career. I'm only 36 going on 37. I've been out of college coming up on 15 years, but I've had quite a few jobs. I've bounced around a lot. So I can kind of see how good of a situation I'm in with my company right now. Mm-hmm. One, I think it's just a great company to work for. They really take care of their employees. I think kind of going through the pandemic with them has showed me kind of a lot of the good things that they do, but also being pretty opportunistic. I think that my company also realizes that there's few African-American employees, few African-American women in positions of leadership. And I feel that I've been in a place where they're really investing a lot in me. Mm-hmm. And it's, like I said, it's been the best company I've worked for and the best job that I've had of all of the places. So I kind of weigh that with the fact that, the company and the job is great. Orange County might not be the permanent home for me. In terms of translating my skills, I do think that, I'm at the point right now where I kind of want to, like, I've spent a lot of time kind of building up a niche skill set that really sets me apart from a lot of other applicants when it comes to the type of work that I do.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to stay in this lane, and so that does kind of limit me to working at other medical device companies.
Mhm.
I mean, I could transfer into like pharmaceuticals, but for numerous reasons, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Other areas of the healthcare sector that might, open up other geographies to me. But for, I think where I am right now, I really do like this medical device space. I really do like the company where I am. So I think that I will probably be here for the foreseeable future. Now there is the potential of, working remotely or things like that. And that comes with, other advantages and disadvantages as well. But yeah, so when I think about other medical device companies that I think could offer me the same opportunities, they're also not in great places. One of the biggest ones is in Minnesota, like outside of Minneapolis, and I don't really want to go there. There are a few outside of Chicago where I'm like, okay, I could probably do that. But when I think about places that, I could live again and that could be home,
Mhm.
and then places where the career opportunities are kind of what I desire and what I need, there's not really a ton of overlap. So I'm kind of at a place right now where I'm just going to kind of stay put and see what happens, because I think the next step would be either going to a different company, maybe in a place where is not necessarily better than where I want to be now, or keeping my same job and, sacrificing by, living somewhere else, because I think by not being at corporate headquarters, you kind of give up something there too. So
Yeah.
we'll kind of see how that goes.
So do you find, are you able to connect with any people that like you in other parts of California? Do you have a network? Do you have a group of people who are in your space so that if you want to do something social? I know we're in the middle of this pandemic and being together face to face is not advertised right now, but what, how do you make yourself a community? How have you done that?
The funny thing is, two of my friends from undergrad, two of my roommates from undergrad live out here, one of them very close to me. So one of my very good friends who has kind of been my rock of Orange County lives maybe 15 minutes away.
Okay.
So she and her husband, she has a family now,
Yeah.
like 3 small kids. Like, she's Jewish. She's like one of my few, probably as far as like my close network of friends, one of my few Jewish friends that I have. And
Mhm.
she has definitely been kind of that community for me. I have a couple of friends up in LA, which is a little bit more of a drive, a little bit more of a hike. And then I do have a community of older Black women that I met when I first moved out here through a meetup group, actually. And we'll do Zoom happy hours and things like that. We used to do monthly dinners and
Mhm.
other, social things that were more interactive. But with the pandemic, it's been a lot of Zoom happy hours and Zoom book clubs and things of that nature. So,
So
yeah.
you found a way to create yourself a community, even though it's not as diverse as you'd like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's-
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned Minneapolis, which raises the topic of Mr. Floyd and the killing of Black and brown people across this land. Where where do you think that emanates from, and how do you see that it changes? Like, are you optimistic or hopeful that the future will be different? We hear about the protests and all these things, but are you optimistic that in your lifetime, Black and brown people will be as valuable, as important, their lives will matter as we go forward?
I wish that I was an optimistic person. I wish that I could view situations like that and see hope rather than despair.
Mhm.
But I honestly have a lack of faith in people, especially Americans, to change for the better. I think we've had countless opportunities in the past, and for things like this to still be happening, and it's not that they still happen, it's that we still have to explain why we're mad and why we're angry, and why these things shouldn't be happening. I realized that there was a lot of positive movement and a lot of hope, especially earlier in the summer. But for me, it's always just been a matter of time. It's like I feel like a lot of people just look for like one little thing to confirm their preconceived notions so they can go back to feeling the way that they felt before. So yeah, I would love to be hopeful and optimistic and think that, things are going to change. I remember how I felt back in November of 2008 when Barack Obama was elected president. I remember how that felt. And I wish that I could have taken that feeling and bottled it up. So for moments like this, I could feel that hopeful again. But I honestly don't, because we see it. It's still happening.
Right.
Even after, people are burning down police precincts because people just can't seem to care about us. Police do the same thing on camera because they know they'll get away with it.
Right.
Even after we get states or localities to change their budgets, to reallocate funding from the police to other areas, you'll see that when this plays out at the local level, there's still politicians who don't want to, put themselves to hold their promises true and do what they said they were going to do because they're scared of the police union. So there's so much that still needs to change that I think that we're just too cowardly to do what really needs to be done. And until we do that, nothing is actually going to change. I fear that, for the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to be protesting people getting killed on camera.
Yeah.
And nothing's going to happen. We're going to see police officers still not held accountable. They're still going to be put on paid leave. And that's just how and I can't, I realize that I'm not putting forth a solution to say this is what needs to happen to change it, because I don't know what that solution is, but I have very little faith in us in America to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think that what your generation may see and those generations that are behind you is that advancements in technology, because this has been going on for years. There was a man killed in Texas. His name was James Byrd, and he was tied to the back of a pickup truck and drugged till his neck, his head. And there were no cameras then, but these things are not unique or not new. They've been ongoing forever. You bring a group of people to your country and you expect them to build your economic foundation, and then now you want to be supreme to them, or you want to be privileged over them. And I remember something Jay-Z said once. He said that good and evil are always going to exist in parallel, and which one survives depends on the category of people that are listening to the narrative. And I think that's such a powerful thing, because and I was just talking to someone a little while ago, I believe that the universe believes in diversity. I don't believe that people believe in diversity. Because if you walk outside, you got a plant behind you. How many plants are there? How many different types of trees? Rocks, whatever it is you can imagine that the universe does. Is not man-made. It's not something that some person created. The universe believes in diversity, but we as people do not. We believe that someone has got to be superior and someone has got to be inferior. And I'm a lot older than you, and so I've seen a lot more of this, and I share your pessimisms. I think that in a lot of ways, you and your generation have the possibility to change, but do you feel empowered to step out there, right? So do you feel safe? So at night, if you're driving back from Los Angeles or somewhere you've been and you see those blue lights in your window, what's the first thing that you think? Is there immediate anxiety or fear or tension? So it's like a dichotomous existence, right? The police are there to protect and serve, but they're also there, and there are lots of them that kill people that don't look like them for reasons that's not really clear. So if you had that magic wand, what would change? What would you change about how we are as citizens of the universe, as a a great nation, the United States? What would you change about us?
Wow, that's a lot. I would say on a big picture level, if I could wave a magic wand and make everyone empathetic, I think that would go a long way.
Yeah.
You see on TV, and I've recently, one of the videos that's come across my social media timeline that's really stood out, this former football player and announcer named Kirk Herbstreit was.
Saw that yesterday.
You saw that, and it's when you see them, you can tell it's okay, he gets it. Like something happened for him. Like there was a switch that went off, and he's able to now understand that he'll never experience what we're going through, but he has that empathy that is going to allow him to be, you know, what we call a good ally.
Right.
You know, he has, if everyone could have that, because that's the thing, a lot of people, it's hard for them to understand something that they don't personally experience is a problem. And I think that that's one of the number one issues here. Like I've lost count of the number of times, you know, when people, you know, the most common we're tore it back to Black Lives Matter is, you know, all lives matter or whatever. And people
Right.
think that, oh, there's no such thing as white privilege because I'm a white person and I'm not, you know, a successful millionaire. They can't see things. They can only see it through their view and their, you know, their frame of reference. And I think until we can get to a point where people can be empathetic, you know, the parallel that I draw is with the LGBTQ movement. You know, it took, for me, there were definitely certain things that, you know, I didn't fully appreciate the transgender rights and their struggle until I had a friend that was able to kind of help me better understand, like allow me to ask questions. And I was like, okay, now I understand kind of, I'll never deal with what you're dealing with or go with what you're going through. But now I understand your struggle, and I feel like that made me a better ally. So I think until, you know, you get to that point where people can have that empathy, like things just aren't going to change, because it's going to take a lot more than just Black and brown people to bring about this change, because it's going to take the people in power to actually do something about it, and for them to get comfortable losing a little bit of that power. So that's one of the big things. And then like from a practical standpoint, like I said, I think until these police unions are, until they lose some of their grip on power, I think that like some of the actual like operational things that need to change to fix like some of the root cause of these issues, police brutality being the top one. I think until that changes, then, so those are like the two biggest things. Yeah, I think the empathy is key, but yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that you also have to think about, so to some degree you work on the fringes of technology, look at community policing, right? So the poorer your neighborhood is, the more police there, which is how we have such large numbers of Black and brown people in jail, incarcerated for, small infractions. You take the one that just, showed up last week, of the Black man in Rochester, New York, who is having a mental health break. He's outside naked and he's spitting, empathy would have been good right there, because here was a man who was not, he didn't have a weapon. They couldn't say he had a weapon because he's naked, right? So they couldn't tell that story, right? So they had to tell it a different way. And so he's spitting. So that justifies putting a hood over his head. And then, he's not cooperating with you. And so that justifies putting your knee on his neck, So there's something about, how you see people, and I always wonder, when the Central Park Five was released from jail and Oprah and Abba did those things of how they see us, it really was a very powerful statement, right? So when you see a Black woman or a Black man, do you actually see a mother, a sister, a child, a wife, do you see that? Or do you see some preconceived notion about us that has been put out there, like we're all angry and we're violent and we're promiscuous and we're all these things, where, going back to slavery, the way they justified the raping of Black women was because we were promiscuous, we would have slept with anybody, and it's like, that's the narrative that has been told about Black women so long that it's become almost expected that that's who you are, and I think that, one of the things that I think would help, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, I'd love to hear them, but like, all these talks about defunding the police has been misaligned and misconstrued to the point where, political parties are having to say they didn't believe this or they mean this, the law and order president, and all of that kind of nonsense. Whereas I think, at least in my opinion, what we're saying about defund the police is like in that case of that man in Rochester, if they would have had a social worker, a psychologist, I don't know who, but someone besides just the police there who could bring calm to that chaos as opposed to death to that man, right? Because, we are at this place where we are just so fed up with this. We are just so tired of seeing people that look like us killed for no reason at all, that you can be sitting in your home, your door closed, bang, the police knocks your door open, in order to self-protect, because you have a right to defend yourself, right? You bring up arms because you don't know who it is. And there's a person killed in her own home. Another Black man in his home. The police officer goes up there and thinks she's in her house. Now, I mean, I don't know, how these things are, but I'm gonna just say there's no way in the world I could mistake my house for my next door neighbor's house unless there was something really, and I know we build a lot of those chalk box houses. They all look alike, but it's just overwhelming to think about that, and to hear young people like you who have got to deal with this in every day of your life. You're encountering it. I mean, in your work, you encounter it, and you said your company is good to you, but where are there efforts to bring more people like you, so you have a community, so you have a mentor, an advocate, or someone in your organization who's there, helping you navigate that company, and how do you advance and grow? How do you know what your next move is? To me, those are the kind of things that are missing in our society, and they seem to be so overtly missing. They don't seem like they're subtle, but it just seems like it's intentional. Because like you, I mean, like what I do, I work in information technology, and I still go to conference and meetings where I'm the only person that look like, and this is 2020. This is not, 1950s, 60s, or 70s, 80s, even the 90s. This is 2020. And how is that possible?
Yeah.
So for people in your generation, what can you do to change that part? So, when your company is hiring someone, do you participate in the hiring process? Do you make recommendations? Do you advocate for someone? Hey, I know this great person. This person's in North Carolina. I think we should give that person an interview. We should give them a chance. I mean, are you in that space?
Definitely. And I think that, it probably varies by industry. I think like I said, my industry is just, there are fewer of us, so the pool is smaller, but I definitely, that's one of my, one of the things that's like one of my personal and professional goals is to, get people kind of get the talent pool filled, get the pool more diverse, so that when we, refer back to this pool for talent, that there's a greater chance that, we'll be picking more people that look like me. So that's definitely a thing. But, one of the things that you mentioned was, I think you made a comment on how like a lot of kind of this environment that we're living in has been intentionally designed that way. And it has been, since the beginning. I mean, you go back to like after Jim Crow, all of like the redlining laws, all of the, I think it wasn't it President Woodrow Wilson who, segregated not just the military, but also the, all of the the federal government. And, like how much of a, leg up into the middle class some of those jobs were. So it's like we've always been kind of fighting either with one hand tied behind our back or trying to play catch up. When I look at some of my colleagues, my counterparts who are doing things, like buying homes. I live in Orange County. It's a very expensive place. And it's, the thing that I think people don't realize is that when a lot of my colleagues are buying homes, they're doing so with the assistance of their family.
Right.
Their parents, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that their parents or someone is going to help them with the down payment. Whereas for me, I'm still paying off graduate student loans because, my parents, like, they worked hard and they gave me opportunities, but we still were, coming from a place, a couple steps behind. So it's like they helped me pay for undergrad, but when it came time for grad school, that was all on me. So it's like, I'm looking at colleagues that are, buying $1 million houses with the help of their parents, and I'm still paying off grad student loans, so I'm still like 10 steps behind them, even though we're both, like, it looks like we're both at the same place, and that's how they view it. They look at me like, oh, Ashley, like, what do you mean? Like, you're a disadvantage? Like, like, we both have the same job and make about the same amount of money. Like, we're even. I'm like, no, it's not that simple. It's not that easy.
Really is not. And I think your point is very, very important to note. Black people have done so much to make this country the great country it is, right? So King Cotton, which was in the South, became the first economic strides in this country, right? And then once they understood cotton, they started growing rice and all kinds of other things, and Black people were expected to do that for free. And then you're emancipated, right? Whatever that may mean, you're emancipated, but you still don't have a foot in the economic game. You don't have a chance at the economic game. then you have, Reconstruction, where you get this one small slither of hope that there's going to be opportunities. Spike Lee says he's still waiting for his 40 acres and a mule, as am I, and probably as most other Black people. You have the indigenous people who are pushed off their land that they had lived on for thousands of years without discombobulating the climate and the environment, right? So we got all kinds of weird weather now. You in California, you're all just burning. Every time you turn on the news, California's on fire. It's just a matter of having smoke burn itself to the ground and just disappear off the side of the earth. All of these things that are man-made, that have discombobulated, Black and brown people in ways that it doesn't anybody else. So you take Katrina, right? So here's this Category 5 hurricane, and what do you see on TV? Poor Black people dying, unable to leave, because white people, either through their own means, or they could call their mom and dad and say, hey, I need to get out. Can I come? Whereas Black people don't have those allies in their families. I'm sure there are a few Black elite rich people who can do all of that, but for the majority of us, that's not the case. We help the way that we can. So, how long will it take you to catch up from paying off your student loans till you can buy a house, right? So that's a very interesting question and a very interesting dilemma, because in reality, we haven't been paid. Jesse Jackson said shortly after Martin Luther King was killed, we're still waiting to get paid for the work we've already done. When are you going to pay us for that? And so here we are in 2020, where I would guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you work hard or harder than anybody else in your organization. You give up or sacrifice of yourself to keep yourself, in that halo space, right? That you're there where they recognize and see how great you are and what you have to offer. Whereas your white colleagues, 2-hour lunch, show up a few minutes late, leave a few minutes early, you're in that space where you're still proving you deserve to be in that space. And that's the process that most Black people sit in. There's a person that worked at my university, and she wanted this other job, this leadership job, and they hired someone else into that role, and she was expected to train them. Like, there's something about that just sounds so wrong to me. Like, I'm supposed to tell you how to do your job, yet and still you're my boss, you're telling me what to do. There's a part of that just make you shake your head and wonder, when will we be paid? When will we be made whole? When will that happen? What has to happen? So if they can kill a Black or brown person without repercussions, I can mispay you or malign you without repercussions. What makes you think I'm going to do reparations or anything else? So how is that possible?
I don't think it is in our society, in America. Like the way our society is set up. Like I said, I'm not one of those idealistic people. I definitely trend more towards the realistic or even pessimistic. And when it comes to issues like that, I don't ever see it happening here.
Yeah. Well, I hope for your sake and your children's sake you are wrong, and that there is parity at some point. There are some statistics and studies that say in the next 20 or 30 years, there will be no majority race. And it was a part of the subtle make America great again. And a lot of people interpret that to mean make America white again, because we had a lot of brown people coming into the United States and, to have a better life, which is what shingle America's always hung out, come for a better life. And for every other ethnicity, coming from Europe, wherever you are, the door's always been open. But for Black and brown communities, Haiti is a perfect example, right? So Haiti is the only country that's ever beat America in a war. And so Haitians are still marginalized in America, still struggle to find their way. And, what we've done to the climate, Haiti's, earthquakes, hurricanes, everything you can imagine happens to them. And how do they ever get on their feet? So in a lot of ways, I'm really hopeful that your generation and for your children's sake, that we figure this out. Because if not, you're going to find yourself in space, building hearts in space, not on Earth, but in space. You're going to have to move, to the grand universe on a planet somewhere and start designing things, because, those that have will go there, and the rest of us will be left here with this planet we've literally destroyed by hook or crook.
Mhm.
I do hope that. So we have about 2-3 minutes. I want to leave the remaining time to say whatever you wish to say if we didn't cover it, or if there's something you want to share that we didn't talk about.
No, I think that we covered everything. I do want to, like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm so pessimistic that I don't think anything is going to get better, because I do think that, and especially at the beginning of this summer, I think that we have seen a change. And, you know, like I said, I watched that video from that football player yesterday a couple of times, and, you know, was almost moved to tears.
Yep.
So I do want to kind of go back to kind of elevating those positive examples of, I think, the type of empathy that we need to see from a lot of people. Because like I said, I think that the biggest takeaway is that we can't do this on our own. Like, we can't fix a system that was meant to hold us back. I mean, it was designed that way for a reason. And I think there are people that have a strong vested interest in ensuring that the system remains that way. So we're not going to be able to do it alone, and it's going to take allies like that. So just to end on a positive note, that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for talking with me. Once the video converts, I'll send you a link and you can let me know if I may upload it.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You do the same. Good luck with the skiing lessons. I can't wait to see how that turns out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.